Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Growing Happy Babies Birthworkers interview series. In this podcast directory, I make sure that you have the easiest possible time deciding which wonderful birth supporter is right for inviting into your family's journey. All the potential members of your essential prenatal and postpartum village are assembled right here in the Growing Happy Babies directory. Doulas, midwives, prenatal and infant body workers, lactation consultants, and so much more. I'm Adina Kopinski, board-certified lactation consultant and fellow mom. Together, we transition more easily into motherhood. Let's grow some happy babies together. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Today, I'm really excited to be talking with Ilana Hart because she has a certification that we haven't talked to anyone with this certification before. Ilana is a perinatal nutrition coach, and nutrition in pregnancy and postpartum period is just so important because we're already going to be so depleted of energy. Supporting ourselves with nutrition is just crucial, and I'm really excited to delve into that side of the conversation with Ilana today. She's also a Lamaze childbirth educator, so a little bit of that childbirth prep rounding out her abilities to help you. So hi, Ilana.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm so happy you're here today. And I always start the podcast with the same question because I love stories. Can you tell us your story of how you came to this place of supporting women in pregnancy?
Yeah, of course. So I hope I won't make this too long. So of course, I got into this profession due to my own personal experiences. I had my first baby 10 years ago. She just turned 10. And at the time, I was just working like in a regular job in high tech, regular person. I didn't really have any formal training in any of the stuff. And we went through some fertility challenges in order to get pregnant. And so that was a whole journey. And then once I got pregnant, within the first trimester, I was told I have gestational diabetes. And so that was kind of a slap in the face. And it was very confusing and overwhelming. And I didn't really know how to manage it. So, of course, I went to the doctor, the high-risk doctor, and to the dietitian. And I just felt like I wasn't getting enough support. I was someone who was already like a healthy eater and someone who was active and worked out. And so this diagnosis didn't make any sense to me. Plus, any of the tools I had as a non-pregnant person were not applicable even. So even eating healthy, healthy is not enough for balancing blood sugars necessarily. So I just felt very lost and confused and that I wasn't finding the resources to help me. And of course, I started digging a little bit on my own and trying to do a bit of research. But back 10 years ago, honestly, social media wasn't even so big. There weren't so many people posting all this good information on the internet or on social media. So I just really felt like I wasn't being supported. Anyways, fast forward a bit, I managed to get through it. I had a healthy baby. And then about a year after that, I fell pregnant again. And so my kids are very close in age. Second pregnancy was the same story. Gestational diabetes from the beginning because I was already considered at a higher risk going in. At this point, I'm like, okay, I kind of know how to manage this. So I'm just going to do what I know and, again, manage to get through. But after having my second baby, I decided I really want to dive in, learn about this, study this. I feel like women are missing such important information. And so I went and studied various things, starting with holistic nutrition, going into women's hormone health, fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, all those things that had impacted me personally. I'm like, I must study these things so I can help another person understand how to get through this. And so that is how I got into this. And so I've been coaching women one-on-one for the past 7-ish years. And then I decided a couple years ago that I would also study to become a childbirth educator through Lamaze, which is an international organization. So I completed that certification and I'm also coaching couples either one-on-one, just me with one couple or in a small group setting. And again, that plays into my own experience, going through childbirth and just feeling like I wasn't prepared enough. I didn't know enough. There's so much I think women should know about how their bodies work and function. And be able to advocate for themselves based on having that knowledge. And if you don't have that knowledge, it's really hard to make the right decisions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if you could zero in on what part of your expertise and the support you offer women and families who are expecting a baby, that's like uniquely you, like what's Ilana about your offering. It could be like a certain kind of expert certification, or it could really be like about your personal philosophy of how you approach helping people.
So I think there's probably two parts to that in terms of what I think is really like stands out or makes me, I guess, unique. First of all, like I said, I never found that there were enough people who really specialize in this area of perinatal nutrition, both in definitely not in the public healthcare system, like definitely not, because dietitians are trained more generally. I don't think they get enough study hours on that specific topic. And even in the private sector, both like in Israel and internationally, it's definitely growing in the past handful of years, but there really aren't so many certification programs that actually focus specifically on pregnancy and postpartum. So I think I do bring unique services that just don't exist in that many places. So, but aside from that, like when I work with women and with couples, really my approach is to make everything as practical as possible. So I know it's possible to get information about nutrition that will be like general guidelines. This is how many servings of grains you should eat in a day, and this is how many servings of fruit and vegetables. But that's not really practical for people. You then have to go and like start calculating, be like, well, okay, so if that's how many I need to now, it's like it's adding more mental load to women who are already at capacity, right? They're all busy, they're working, they might have other small kids at home. They don't have time to go and figure all this out. So when I coach someone, and I also want to give them a nutrition plan, I give them recipes, I give them meals, I make a plan where I know how many nutrients they should be getting. I do the calculations. Like I know, yes, if you're pregnant, this is what you need in trimester 1 or 2 or 3. And then I give them the actual, meals. I go, well, here is your meal plan. So like if you're eating these meals or kind of in this type of structure for the day, you will be getting what you need, right? So they don't have to do all this like mental gymnastics to figure it out themselves. So I think my approach is just really making everything really simple, really practical, really doable. So again, just considering everyone's so busy and you don't have time to do a whole degree to learn these things, like that's what I'm for.
That's amazing. I really love that philosophy because the mental load that people carry during pregnancy is just like, I mean, it's so much to begin with just to be pregnant, and then you add on family and work, and it's just really intense. And I think where people get super overwhelmed is how to implement the guidelines. I love it. I love that attitude. It's probably an amazing service for your clients.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you maybe like illustrate how this plays out in a real world story, of how this kind of support has helped maybe a particular mom or family?
Yeah. So let me think. I'll give you an example of a client who came to me with gestational diabetes. So this was not even her first pregnancy, and this was not her first pregnancy with gestational diabetes, which I'm going to call GD from now on, because that is a tongue twister to say. So this was like her 4th pregnancy, and she'd already have previous pregnancies with GD, which means whatever help and guidance she'd gone previously, she had something. Again, I don't know what it was because, like I said, in the public healthcare system, I don't find the guidance to be particularly on point or even up to date in terms of like what the evidence is saying. But she wasn't new to this, right? But she came to me because she was mainly feeling overwhelmed at the fact that she was the manager of her household. She had to feed her 3 small children. And she had this diagnosis in pregnancy where she was worried for her own health and the health of her growing baby. She had to feed herself in a way that was going to maintain her own health. So it was like a combined thing of dealing with also a health condition and also this whole thing of like meal prep and being a busy working mom and how do I get this done? Mm-hmm. And so I really enjoyed working with her because I just told her like, listen, the mental load is on me. I'm going to give you this plan and I'm going to work with you and coach you and we're going to troubleshoot, and wherever you're having problems, like I'm here for you. I'm going to make it as simple as possible. And we worked together for several months, and her blood sugars were managed. And anytime something came up again, like I looked at what she was eating, helped her troubleshoot and course correct, and helped her personally. But the best thing about working with this particular client was that she came back to me and she said, listen, the recipes you gave me and the meals you gave me, I've been making for my whole family. And suddenly my son is like, oh, I love salmon. And my daughter is like, oh, I love this. And I'm introducing new foods and meals that I wouldn't have thought to make. And not only is this perfect for my own health and for my pregnancy, but like my kids are really into it too. And my whole family is eating better. We're all eating healthier. And my kids are now trying new foods. And so it had this beautiful trickle effect. Whereas not only was I making her life easier in terms of just like meal planning one thing for everybody, but it's like, wow, okay, my kids, kids can be picky with food. And it's one of even the biggest challenges with small kids, getting everyone to eat and whatever. But she's like, yeah, so now everyone's eating all these foods and they're loving it. And so, I felt like it had this great positive effect on everybody.
Would you say that you mostly work with clients who have gestational diabetes?
Not only. I really love working with those clients because, again, of my own personal experience. And so it's like, I know where they've been. I know the frustrations, and I love just making that easier for them. But I work with clients across anything from fertility issues to preconception planning, pregnancy in general, like anything pregnancy related, postpartum. I do the whole range.
What's your top piece of nutrition advice for a pregnant woman?
My top piece of nutrition advice, like if you I need one thing I should be doing that I don't know I should be doing, eat whole foods. Because in pregnancy, your nutrient needs go up so much that in order to really meet the amount of nutrients your body needs to create a healthy baby and also to make sure the mom stays healthy is through eating whole foods where you're going to get all those nutrients. So if half your day you're just living off of snack bars and I don't know, those fast to grab foods because you don't have time, that already indicates to me that you're probably not getting enough of the nutrients you need on a regular basis. But if you're just whole foods and simple meals, really just grilled chicken, grilled fish, grilled vegetables, salads, whole grains. If you're just basing your diet off of whole foods, you're probably already at a really good starting point. So that would be one piece of advice. But that's why I like to work one-on-one with people, because every case is so different and each woman comes in from a different point and each person is dealing with a different issue, whether it's just a common pregnancy symptom that she's trying to manage, or it's something like gestational diabetes or whatever. So it's so nuanced. So it's hard to give something that's yeah, do this, but there you have it. That's my one overlying piece of advice.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite book or website or something that you refer women to when they're asking you questions about pregnancy nutrition?
So I always like to dive in and do the research and look things up. If I don't know the answer immediately, I will go and dive into it and come back to them. But there are two really great resources that I think people can follow, even on their blogs. Lily Nichols is amazing for nutrition, all stuff related to pregnancy nutrition. I think her blog is easier to digest, let's say, than her books. But she does have books as well. And there's another woman named Sarah Thompson, who is a functional maternity specialist. And she really deep dives into all the nitty gritty of all the specific nutrients and exactly what they affect and how they affect. So for me, I find it fascinating. I'm always following what she's researching and saying. I don't know for the regular person, they would think it was interesting to read or think it's just heavy to process. But yeah, she's also really good in that nutrition space.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that when you work with women prenatally, it leads to an easier postpartum?
Yes, I love that question. So while I do focus a lot on coaching during prenatal, it definitely has a positive impact on when the woman makes it to postpartum, because a lot of the food habits that we set up during pregnancy that's a time where even though she might already be a busy person and she thinks her life is at capacity, well, we know what it's like when you get to postpartum. You're like, oh no, my life is now chaotic and at capacity. Like you don't even realize how crazy it gets. So at least during pregnancy, she has a bit more mental space to think about making some changes in her food habits, in her eating habits, and then in like the actual foods she's eating. And then while nutrition is very specific in different trimesters, there are some things as well, and a lot of things that carry over from what you're eating in pregnancy to the same types of core foods you should be eating in postpartum. So yes, and I've definitely had feedback from clients where like we weren't even focusing specifically on postpartum because they really came to me focusing on pregnancy and being as healthy as possible during pregnancy. But like the feedback was, oh my gosh, postpartum was also so much smoother and so much easier because I already kind of knew what to do and I could just keep like doing it into postpartum. And then also when I work with clients during pregnancy, I do also offer them like specific coaching for postpartum. But again, I find it more effective to put a plan in place during the pregnancy and figuring out how are you going to prepare for postpartum. And I like to make that sort of as holistic as possible and not just what they're eating, but like, you know, who's your support system going to be? And like, what is it going to look like after you give birth? And what role does your partner play? Also, like, who's going to be feeding you? And, you know, are you going to set up a meal train or are you going to try and freeze some food ahead of time? Or just playing out all the scenarios of just making them realize how chaotic it's going to get. And so it's always better to plan ahead to feel the most prepared for postpartum.
Yeah. Do you ever work with women who are approaching you who are already in the postpartum period and maybe just finding themselves, I don't know, having medical issues or just incredibly exhausted? Do you ever start with people at that point?
I don't often start with them in like that immediate postpartum period just because I haven't had so many who reach out to me then. But yeah, of course, like honestly, I'm very adaptable to whatever part of the journey somebody wants to come and start working with me. And I understand the different stages. So I try and make it just, again, like everything, all the advice that I'll give and all of that, I really try and make it as simple and implementable as possible, because if I'll just kind of give out too much, you know, throw too many things at someone, or I don't know, give them complicated meals they should be making, like they're not going to do it. So we really focus on very, very, very small habit changes when I coach someone, like really the simplest things. And I think people don't even understand that it's even these simple things that can make such a big difference. It's not that you have to overhaul your entire diet, throw out everything in your cupboards and start again. Like, no, that's not even practical. No one's going to do that either. But you don't even have to do that. It's like every step forward you take, every small thing, every tweak, just add this one ingredient into your food. Like every step you take is going to help you, you know, build yourself in the right direction and in the path of being healthier and addressing, again, like any symptoms or complications or issues that you're coming up against.
Yeah. Could you give us an example of what like one of those tiny tweaks looks like?
A tiny tweak, for instance, is making sure that you're adding a source of protein into your food. So if someone is, I don't know, let's say, okay, here's an example. A woman in her first trimester and she's feeling really nauseated. So she's honestly just a lot of food aversions. And she's like, everything's giving me the ick and I don't want to eat anything. I just want to eat pasta and crackers all day long. But I know that that's not going to be the best thing for her to eat, just pasta and crackers all day long. So we find like that one thing she can add onto her food. I tell her, well, just anything sit well with you. Like, can you eat eggs? Can you eat cheese? And she's like, oh yeah, no, I love like melting cheese on my pasta. I go, great. So you've added in some cheese. It adds some protein and fats. It makes that meal a bit more balanced. Like, do that. So it's not like you have to be perfect and start having these beautiful, colorful meals if everything is making you feel nauseated. But like, there are definitely things you can add in that's going to make it give it a bit more nutrition and then a bit more balanced meal. Another example is with gestational diabetes. When it goes unregulated, when the blood sugars are not managed, that child is at higher risk of developing diabetes in their lifetime. So like there are definite links between nutrition and nutrient intake and pregnancy and outcomes for your child.
Yeah, and of course, unmanaged gestational diabetes leads to larger babies, which equals childbirth complications. And then sometimes the infant in the early newborn period has blood sugar swings
Yeah,
that create medical
exactly.
complications, or they have excess weight loss in like the first 2, 3 days postpartum. And then you end up needing to, give a bottle because of the weight loss. Like there are definitely things that can happen with like the unmanaged gestational diabetes portion.
Yeah. And I'll give you another example. Like if we're talking about like pregnancy, so I was trying to lean more on just general, pregnancy health. But if we're talking about pregnancy complications, there are also specific nutrients that affect or could affect preterm birth or low birth weight, which also impacts the baby's health as soon as they're born. And they might need to be in the NICU or have extra care given because we know that you want your baby to stay in there cooking as long as possible for the best lung and brain. And, all the organs are developing at full speed towards the end of the third trimester. So that can also lead to certain complications if your baby is born early. And a lot of these complications are also linked together, like one will impact the other. Like preeclampsia, for instance, which is a high blood pressure, you're at higher risk of having GD. Like they all kind of play together. And so there are tons of nutrition strategies and nutrients linked to all these conditions and ways you can be managing them through the way that you're eating.
Yeah, one of my like favorite nutritional tidbits that I talk with my lactation clients postpartum. I see your clients after they give birth when they're breastfeeding or bottle feeding. I mean, I don't want to discount the bottle feeders because they struggle with oral function as well, and I definitely do see them. So something really interesting is that if you have a high protein breakfast, it helps basically seal the gut barrier where the breast milk is being produced, and it helps like proteins from your diet from entering the breast milk. So babies who are food reactive or food sensitive and reacting to things that you're eating in your diet, if you have a really high protein breakfast, can actually stop reacting because the breast milk has filtered those proteins better when you eat protein for breakfast.
Well, that's cool because that's something I did not know, but I always like there's a different reason why I tell mothers they must have protein in their breakfast. So it's
Yeah, it's great
all,
for energy levels also. Like the moms who are just like so tired. I'm like, okay, we're not having oatmeal for breakfast. We're having salmon, like
yeah,
a really good protein boost. And
yeah, like
a little bit
definitely.
of nutritional stuff without me being a nutritionist or a nutritional coach because everything is so interrelated.
Yeah, and I'm sure you like see this hands-on, like you're saying, you go into their homes as, right when they've had their babies, so you can see what's happening exactly. I don't often visit moms and like I don't again because it's such a chaotic time. All they're trying to do is survive at that point in time and make sure the breastfeeding is going well. So that wouldn't be the time when I'm like coaching people. It'd be if they approach me maybe a couple months after having the baby, things like that. So it's so interesting to see your perspective and like what you're seeing. But yeah, I'm always that's
Yeah.
like one of my things too. If you were asking about sort of the overarching, what would you tell people? It's like
Yeah.
have breakfast and make sure you include protein in your breakfast. It's
Hmm.
so funny because it has an impact on so many things, and it's not even just energy levels. It like impacts digestion. Like
Hmm.
it's nuts how much it can impact.
Yeah, and iron. I mean, iron is a huge player in breast milk production. If you've lost a lot of blood postpartum, or if you're just chronically anemic, those moms can struggle with low milk supply. And what they need is to boost their iron, and then their milk supply boosts. It's just a
Yeah,
really,
and iron is a big one because yes, a lot of women are anemic before giving birth, and then it gets even more depleted once you've lost blood during childbirth. And iron is also one of those nutrients that is very closely tied to postpartum depression. So there's a lot of impact of nutrition also on mental health and on mood. And I'm not discounting postpartum depression. It is many women do suffer from it, but when a woman is having symptoms showing postpartum depression, alongside consulting her doctor and health practitioner, it would also be important to test certain nutrients because if they're low, this can be exacerbating. So, like iron is one of those ones. If you're super low on iron, it also can exacerbate that type of disorder.
yeah, I didn't know that specifically about iron, but I did definitely notice that women with higher protein diets tend to be a little more stable in their mental health. This being anecdotal, just from, the women that I work with. And people who are eating high protein diets are very often eating animal protein because it's easier to get those high quantities from animal protein. And that would in
Yeah.
and of itself be boosting their iron. So like there's kind of like a pathway we can see over here. And then of course there are ways to do it when you're not eating animal protein, but you need to be a little more mindful.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point too, because it is more challenging in prenatal and postnatal health with a vegetarian diet. Like, you definitely need to be more mindful of what and how you're going to get all those nutrients. Because like you said, those animal proteins are really like a powerhouse for so many of the nutrients that are needed. So yeah.
Yeah. We talked so much about your nutrition practice, Ilana, but I wonder if you could just like take a minute before we end to just tell us a little bit about your Lamaze education as well.
Yeah. So definitely would love to share that. So when I lead my childbirth classes, they are very much like Lamaze focused and very much focused on getting ready for labor and for birth and for postpartum. But because of my nutrition background, I also weave that in. And so something I also include in my courses is like, when you are towards the very end of your third trimester, what are the foods you want to be eating that are going to support labor? And then in like early labor and active labor, like what should you be eating and drinking, and etc. So that's something that I think is like unique to my childbirth classes, that I give them that sort of envelope of nutrition as well, so that they understand they can be introduced in these things into it as well. But I think what I love so much about doing the childbirth prep courses is that I really think that giving women the knowledge, right? The knowledge about how their body actually works is so empowering. In other words, I don't know, everyone comes into birth differently. A lot of women are very scared, and if you've never done it before, right? Like, they don't know what they're getting into, so who knows what's going to happen. And so when you teach them about, well, this is what's happening, like, this is what's happening hormonally, this is what's happening physically, this is what's happening mentally. It's like all these components have to come together. I feel like giving them the knowledge really like gives them the confidence to, okay, if I understand what my body is doing, I can navigate this, I can make the right decisions for myself. And if there are decisions that have to be made that take me off the course I was thinking, at least it's like I know what the options are. I understand it can go this way or this way. I know how to come at those decisions from a place not of fear, but of confidence that I know enough about how my body works and what's going to be best for me and my baby. So really, that's what I think is so important with the birth prep stuff. But I also want to mention that in my birth prep classes, I do focus a lot on postpartum, because I think that most women just plan up until baby comes out, and then they're like, oh, whoops, I don't know what happens afterwards.
Yep.
So yeah, so we do really focus a lot on postpartum. And then again, like, I offer a sort of a bonus session, a postpartum nutrition plan that's sort of on the side. And then in terms of like navigating postpartum, in terms of what is your plan, and okay, so baby is born, and now let's focus back on the mother, because everything after that is just focused on the baby. And okay, how many poopy diapers did they have, and how many this, and you'll get a bit of, an explanation about what's happened with your baby in the first days in the hospital. But then it's like, what happens with the mother? There's so much recovery and healing that she's going through, like physically, and then again, hormonal shifts and mentally, and everything's all over the place. And we have to position her and help set her up to heal and recover as best as possible. And while that's happening, it's like all the logistics of like who is managing the household and what is happening and who's going to take care of baby and who's going to be up at night. So there are so many things to navigate in that postpartum period as well. So I definitely focus a lot on helping the mother and her partner like create that plan and understand also all the things that are happening after postpartum, so at least they can come as prepared as possible.
Yeah. There's such a push to prepare for birth, and families get so understandably focused on that. It's so exciting, it's so new, it's so novel, and then they get to postpartum, which is sometimes even way longer than birth when you talk about feeding your infant, and they're just surprised. They're really surprised.
And the thing is, and I think like it's so important for women to know this too, is like postpartum is in that first 6 weeks when your doctor says, oh yeah, you're good to go. And it's not even that first 3 months, which is also called the fourth trimester, that sort of extension of pregnancy. Postpartum is like, at least, I would say, at least a year and many more years after having a baby, because the amount of depletion that your body goes through nutrient-wise is crazy. It takes years to build those nutrient stores back up. Yeah. And so it's really like, you need to think of it in the long term. And then all the things that can happen to your body that you didn't know could happen to your body. Well, you're now living in a new body. You've got to also, I really recommend for all women to do pelvic floor physio and to do rehab exercises. In other words, don't just hit the ground running when your doctor said you're good and start jogging a marathon again. Like, I really think you need to build back up. And again, it's a lot of rehab and recovery and repair that happens in postpartum that I think women should know that they should, take it slowly and gradually in order to build yourself back up to the best health you can be at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you had just one piece of advice that you could give a pregnant woman about her prenatal period or her postpartum period, what would that be?
Okay, so I think one piece of advice I would share is find your mama community. Find those mamas who have been through this, although the kind that are in the same headspace as you, right? You can find those mamas who are just telling you all the horror stories, and then you're even more scared about all this stuff that's going to happen. But find that community of mamas where you're going to get support, and you can ask for advice and tips and see, kind of beautiful birth experiences and early motherhood experiences people went through, and just someone who's going to just tell you the real stuff. I think it's important I think it's hard if you go into it not having other mom friends or people in the same headspace as you, or who can give you that good advice. So yes, of course, there's professionals, and you can obviously do coaching and do breastfeeding consults, etc. But aside from all that, I think it's really important to have this sort of community of mamas, and also because it can sometimes feel like a lonely experience, and just to have people who are in that same boat as you are, whether it's during pregnancy, during postpartum, and for me especially, and I know this is people don't think about talking about this when you're going through fertility challenges like I did. I felt like I was the only person on the planet who was experiencing that. And if I'd had other people who were in the same boat who I could talk to, it would have helped in that respect. So yeah, I guess that's my piece of advice.
Yeah, I know community is so important, and we were never ever meant to go through these experiences alone. We were always supposed to be going through them in a collective of women who were going through similar experiences or had gone through similar experiences, but it was never meant to be alone. And that's just the way modern life is. It's more fragmented.
Yeah, for sure.
Ilana, it was really nice to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Friends, check out the full directory for every interview we've done up until now, housed at my website, growinghappybabies.com. But before you go, I've got one question. Are you the kind of person who learns better by listening or by doing? In my 2-part online prenatal breastfeeding class, The Pocket Prenatal, I blend the basics of breastfeeding with practical hands-on skills. Choose to watch the videos on your computer or phone, read through the transcripts, or pop in an earbud, take a walk, and listen to the audio-only podcast version. After you've dived into the what's and whys of breastfeeding, join part 2, our live hands-on class, where we roll up our sleeves and practice the how of breastfeeding. Experience hand expression, learn how to size yourself for better pumping, practice bottle feeding techniques that improve your baby's sucking skills, and use easy bodywork exercises to help your baby's comfort, sleep, and digestion. You're going to walk out of this class with an essential toolkit for navigating early motherhood. This is the class every baby needs their mother to take. Go to thepocketprenatal.com and use your listener code, Growing Happy Babies, for a special 10% discount. See you there.